everybody can hear me. Jin Young, if you can just confirm that I am
We hear you
coming out
very
loud and
well.
clear.
Very well.
Very well, good. All right, so, well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, and welcome. My name is Farai Madziwa. I am the coordinator for the Readiness Program at the Adaptation Fund. And I have the pleasure of serving as your moderator today. It's a real pleasure to bring together what I think is such a strong community of practitioners, partners, and innovators working at the forefront of climate adaptation. Today's session, which is titled Unlocking Adaptation Innovation, Designing Accelerators, Incubators, and Competition-Based Mechanisms, focuses on a question that is becoming increasingly urgent. And the question is, how do we move innovation from good ideas to scalable, locally led adaptation solutions that actually reach the communities who need them the most? I won't say much more on this because we also have present Salia Dobasig, who is the team lead for programming and innovation under the fund. And she will give some welcome remarks and touch more on AFCIA and financing innovation under the fund. But in this webinar, what I will say is we will be drawing on the hard-won implementation experience of our partners, being UNEP CTCN, UNDP, WFP, who have been really instrumental in that journey. And today we want to turn those lessons into practical guidance for other implementing entities looking to design and develop similar projects and programs under the fund. So I encourage you to really interact as much as possible, ask questions, and share your own experiences. So before we begin, just a few quick notes on webinar etiquette to help us make this session as productive as possible. Please keep your microphones muted at all times unless you're invited to speak. You may turn on your video when you take the floor. If you wish, it would be nice to put the faces to the voices. Feel free to share your questions and reflections in the chat throughout the session, throughout the webinar. And when posing questions, when you do take the floor, please feel free to turn on your camera and take the floor, but try to be concise and specific, so we can address as many questions as possible. If you're not taking the floor, as I said, you can type your question in the chat, and we have our colleagues on standby, and they'll be responding also on the chat. We have interpretation available for French and Spanish, so please click on the language of your choice. There's a little globe icon at the bottom left corner of the screen, and you can click that and pick the language of choice between French and Spanish, and of course English. And finally, please note this webinar is being recorded. And it will be posted on our website just for those who are not able to attend in real time. And with that, are there any objections to the recording and the webinar being recorded? I don't see any objection. So with that, let's get started, and I invite Salia to give us some welcome remarks. So Salia, over to you.
Thank you, Farai. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone joining us from different regions. It is a real pleasure to welcome you to today's webinar, and I'm happy to see many colleagues from our national implementing entities and others. Thank you for taking the time to join us and for your continued engagement with the Adaptation Fund. Direct access is, as you know, at the heart of our model, and forums like this are essential for peer learning, reflection, and practical exchange. I would also like to extend a sincere thank you to the AFCIA colleagues who are joining us here today. We are very grateful to you that you have agreed to share your experiences, insights, and lessons learned. AFCIA, Adaptation Fund Climate Innovation Accelerator for long, has already generated a rich body of practical knowledge on innovation and climate adaptation. and your willingness to share your insights and recommendations openly with national implementing entities and other stakeholders is what makes these exchanges possible. And we're all grateful for that. Let me say a few words about why the Adaptation Fund invests in innovation. At its core, adaptation is about responding to real evolving risks in complex and uncertain contexts. Climate impacts are increasing so long as greenhouse gas emissions continue to be at their highest level in millions of years. Meanwhile, the resources dedicated to avoiding climate impacts are not keeping pace with this increase in risk. In this environment, relying only on established approaches is not enough. Innovation is a space that allows us to test new ideas, combine technologies and practices in novel ways, and explore unconventional solutions that may not yet be fully proven but hold strong potential for impact and learning. These solutions may help us buy time, save lives, protect assets, and do much more with less, essentially. Innovation for the Adaptation Fund is not about innovation for its own sake. It is about learning what works, what does not, and under what conditions, and then using that knowledge to inform future programming at scale. Programs like AFSI are grounded in practical experimentation, especially at the local level. So piloting new tools, delivery models, partnerships, and financing approaches. All of this with the aim of improving adaptation outcomes on the ground. And this brings me to a point I would like to emphasize as I close my remarks to you, the strength of the Adaptation Fund's implementing entity model. So one of the unique features of our model is the way in which different types of implementing entities, and in this particular case, UN agencies, can help pilot and test innovative approaches in diverse contexts. And these pilots generate evidence, experience, and lessons that countries and implementing entities can draw on. National implementing entities, for example, are able to adapt, replicate, or scale these approaches in ways that best fit the national circumstances, the priorities and institutional realities of the country that they operate in. And so this model creates a virtuous cycle of learning. Innovation at the program level, knowledge sharing across entities, and country-driven application and scaling. It allows innovation to be de-risked at first and then contextualized and ultimately owned by countries themselves. Today's webinar is very much in that spirit. While the Adaptation Fund offers funding for innovation that is outside the country cap amount, this funding can be accessed for different kinds of innovation projects. What we're presenting today is one model. It is hopefully some inspiration, one possibility to potentially consider replicating. By learning about what has worked under AFSIA, countries and NIEs may tailor their adaptation and innovation efforts in ways that build upon the successes of AFSIA and refine rather than reinvent the wheel. And with that, I would like to thank you once again for joining us, and I look forward to what I hope will be a useful and engaging session. Thank you.
Thank you, Salia, for those remarks, and particularly also touching on the issue of de-risking investments in innovation, which is critical to attract more players in the field. But I'd like to invite Alisa Gomez. She's the programming coordinator, specifically focusing on innovation and locally led adaptation at the fund. And she will go into a little bit more depth on what innovation at the Adaptation Fund is all about, expanding from what Salia has already touched on. And she'll also provide a bit of background and context, basically setting the scene for all the other presentations to follow. So, Alisa, the floor is yours. And as Alisa is presenting, as I mentioned earlier, for those who have just joined, please feel free to type in your questions in the chat, and we will be happy to respond. At the end, we will give a few minutes also for those who want to ask questions by taking the floor, and we'll do that for after each presentation. But for now, Alisa, over to you, please.
Very good morning, everyone. Thank you, Farai. I hope you can hear me loud and clear and can see my presentation as well. In this presentation, I hope to very quickly at first walk you through innovation at the Adaptation Fund, and then spend some time on what this webinar is about in terms of how this could be relevant to you, our national and regional implementing entities. So innovation is a strategic pillar of the Adaptation Fund, and the fund aims to innovate not just through its projects and programs, but then also through its processes. And Saliha also referred to direct access, and more recently we have locally led adaptation projects and programs, but then also our accelerator programs, which is the focus of this webinar. This is to give you a snapshot of the portfolio at large. As you can see, we have a very modest portfolio for our innovation projects and programs. And so hopefully this webinar will help give you some inspiration on when you want to design projects and programs for any of the funding windows. Very briefly, we have three main windows for innovation. We have our small innovation grants that are accessible only to national implementing entities. Followed by that, we have our large innovation grants. Now, these are accessible to national, regional, and multilateral implementing entities. These are up to 5 million. And there are no limits to the number of small or large innovation grants a country can access, as these are all outside the country cap. So you're more than welcome to access more than one window at a time and submit more than one proposal at a time as well. Finally, the Adaptation Fund Climate Innovation Accelerator Program is a unique model. In this case, projects in implementing entities are specifically invited by the Adaptation Fund Board. And the board only invites multilateral and regional implementing entities because the scale and scope of these projects are often multi-country, multi-regional, and even global in nature. But through these accredited implementing entities that will be implementing projects and programs, a number of actors can access resources. These can be non-accredited actors, but also national implementing entities as well. Very briefly, innovation at the fund is aimed at meeting the urgency for climate action. The strategic pillar for innovation at the fund defines 4 expected areas and these range from new innovations, piloting innovation, encouraging risk-taking. What this means is that the Adaptation Fund Board has a higher risk tolerance when it comes to innovation, noting that it is possible that in the portfolio of interventions, not every innovation is going to be successful. However, with learning mechanisms and incorporating iterative processes for learning, we can ensure that these can then better inform future projects and programs. The projects and programs can also include replicating or scaling up successful innovations that have taken place through any of the funding windows. And this is not just relevant to the innovation window, but perhaps through your regular projects and programs, there might be something innovative that came up that could potentially be scaled up with the other funding windows of the Adaptation Fund. Again, there's a high focus on technical assistance and building capacities of countries and generating an evidence base for these projects and programs. So in this schematic, you can see that there are multiple pathways for scale up. You can have a small innovation grant from a national implementing entity that could potentially be scaled up by the large innovation grants. You can also have AFCIA smaller projects that could be scaled up by the large innovation grants. UNEP, in fact, is implementing this model through a project in Burundi that implemented a slam dam project that was a small grants AFSIA project, and also another project coming up for the Maldives. As mentioned that there are regional projects that could be accessed and as well as national projects that could be accessed. AFSIA's focus is that it enables access to non-accredited actors. And so this is expanding the scope of the type of innovators and grantees that can access resources for innovation. In this slide, I want to walk through what are some of the innovation we're seeing through the two funding windows, the small innovation grants and the large innovation projects. We're seeing a range of community-led solutions. There is a range of local technology applications, whether it's water-filled barriers or desalination technology that is community-led and community-designed, plug-and-play, smaller systems. There is a focus on capacity enhancement. We're seeing youth education models as well as partnerships with universities to help design specific technologies that are then applied at the local level. You can see the geographic scope is quite wide. Similarly, for the large innovation grants, we're seeing a higher uptake of innovative financing mechanisms, whether they're working through a range of small, medium, micro enterprises. We're seeing performance-based grants being delivered, as well as our cross-regional projects where we're looking at developing systems or databases for various solutions, such as hydromet data, for example. We're seeing projects across different sectors. Many of our projects are multi-sector in nature, but then are also projects that focus on specific sectors such as agriculture or water management, focusing on specific ecosystems as well. So as you can see, in the large innovation grants, we see a mix of technology, finance, even innovations and governance arrangements and delivery mechanisms. And as well as many of these projects are also scaling up something that the country has successfully implemented in one region to another region. And there is also this opportunity for pilots to be scaled at the cross-regional level as well. And so while these are all welcome, and if you have innovative ideas for the small innovation grants and the large innovation grants, you're more than welcome to apply these approaches or even expand beyond these solutions and approaches that I've just gone through in this slide. But for this specific webinar, we want to focus on the AFSIA model because the AFSIA model is unique in the sense that while the current implementing partners are implementing them at the global and the regional scale, they could potentially be an opportunity for national projects or regional projects involving 2 or more countries to potentially also design projects. So these are our current AFSIA projects that are under implementation. We will hear today from UNEP, from UNDP and WFP, but we also have projects implemented by UNIDO, SPC, and of course UNEP has its phase 2 program as well that you'll hear about. The AFSIA program is expanding, and there are a number of implementing entities that are currently developing proposals. These implementing entities have been invited by the Adaptation Fund Board, some of them most recently from the meeting in October. And you can see a number of these programs, when they come into existence and they start implementation, there could be opportunities for non-accredited actors and potentially national implementing entities to also access resources directly from these programs. So why are we talking about this model, the AFCM model? It's because innovation support mechanisms can be understood as different entry points, whether they are incubators that support very early stage ideas to move from concept to prototype, or whether they are accelerators that are more situated within the growth stage and scaling stage, or perhaps they could be a structured way to source ideas and to identify various ideas that could be funded through competitions or challenge funds, for example. These models, I wouldn't give away a lot at this point, but through these models, you'll hear about the way these implementing entities have thought about the design and how they've implemented processes, also bearing in mind that building technical assistance, whether they be defining the innovation, co-designing these approaches, partnerships with various stakeholders, whether they be universities, whether they be investors, whether they be business schools. So all of these ideas could potentially serve as as good inspiration if you're designing projects. And further, you will learn from what has worked, what have been some of the challenges, how these implementing entities have tried to address them, and also why they may have focused, for example, on a global approach versus a regional approach through cohorts, etc. And so we hope these insights from our implementing entities that you will hear from will be able to really help you think about the different ways that you can design innovation projects and programs and submit them to the Adaptation Fund. So with that, I end my presentation. I hope the following presentations and discussions would be helpful to you. We encourage you to really ask questions, take opportunities of the experience that our implementing entities will share. That's all for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Elisa, for that overview. Just a temperature check. Are there any questions regarding how the innovation funding windows and innovation financing works under the Adaptation Fund? Any questions at the moment before we get into more practical, exciting, on-the-ground lessons and experience?
Farai, we have one hand raised by Luigi Lugaresi.
Thanks for that, Ishani. I couldn't see the hand from my end, but I see Luigi, you have your hand raised. Please go ahead and take the floor. You can unmute yourself. And if you wish, you can also turn on your camera if you wish. But please go ahead.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you, but a little faint, so maybe you can
excuse me,
try to
it was
speak up a little
a
bit.
mistake. I didn't mean to push the button, excuse me. It was a mistake. Sorry.
Okay.
Oh.
I got it.
Yeah.
So Luigi just said that he pushed the button by mistake, so it wasn't a hand raised. Any question, comment before we move on? I'm not seeing any, so thanks, Alisa, for being very clear. We'll move on now to our next presenter, and that's going to be Nadesh Troselia. And Nadesh, apologies if I'm pronouncing your name wrong, but she is the CTCN Global Adaptation Lead at CTCN, UNEP CTCN, and she'll share lessons for those of you who are probably considering developing innovation programs at the national or regional context. And she will share their experience on that. So Nadesh, over to you, and feel free to say your name correctly. I think I'm probably saying it wrong, but the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Farai. Hello, good morning, afternoon, evening, everyone. My name is Nadej, so you said it very nicely and very correctly. Thank you. I'm working for UNEP-CTC, and thank you very much to the Adaptation Fund for inviting us today to present some results and takeaways from AFSIA. My presentation is going to be divided into three parts. First, some lessons learned on AFSIA 1, the first edition of this program, then some information about AFSIA 2, which is open for sourcing projects, and then very briefly an overview of the coordination that Alisa already mentioned by saying that we are more than one entity implementing AFSIA, so many opportunities that are available to EU Adaptation Fund focal points. Let me quickly jump into AFSIA 1, the first program that started in the case of UNEP-CTC in 2019 and closed in October 2025, and through which we implemented 25 projects in 23 countries. 52% of these projects were implemented in seed and LDCs, and through which we divided the program into three main sectors that you can see: early warning system, water management, and food security. The list of the countries can be seen in the blue bubbles, so hopefully you will recognize yours, and if you don't, please, you have an opportunity to submit new proposal for AFSIA 2. This
Nadej,
5 million program.
Nadej, sorry, you might want to just blow up your presentation and just click on the presenter mode. Sorry, slide view mode, so we can see you. There we go, like that. Thank you. Please go ahead. Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you very much. So the program managed to benefit more than 2 million beneficiaries, 42% women, 20% youth, and we supported countries in creating new, improved, or strengthened early warning systems that benefit 947 municipalities. More than 11,000 staff were trained to these different technologies that were described in the one of the slides, divided into early warning system, water management, and food security. And we developed 56 tools, practices, regulations, policies, business models that can be considered as enabling environment to support the scale-up and the market stage of the technologies. Out of the 25 initiatives, 40% have already managed to support, to scale, to find additional funding, $17 million, and 75% are ready to scale up. Some of the lessons learned that we had is that first we had the confirmation for this program that small pilot on the ground community-led projects are very important because they create very tangible impacts, and it's also an opportunity to while testing and piloting a technology, to identify what works, what doesn't work, what could have been done better, what is missing in terms of regulation and standards and certification maybe, and on policies from a more governmental analysis and point of view. So they do provide a very key insight when it comes to adaptation and climate change and innovation. Another lesson learned that we have is that women and youth are part of the change, and they should be included in the design of the project because they are essential for the success and the sustainability of the climate adaptation efforts. So it's very important somehow to be able to involve the women of the community, the youth of the community from this design stage, so that they can understand what is going to happen, what are we going to do, and how this is going to impact my life, my resilience to the effect of climate change, because this is a game changer. And another lessons learned is on sustainability, replicability, and scalability. It's very important to have the chance to analyze different solutions for scale up and to try to have diverse mechanisms that can be used. Some key remaining challenges and gap that we have identified is that there are many actors working on climate change with different accelerators, different innovators, different programs, different projects, and sometimes we work a bit in silos, and it's difficult for you as representative of your countries, as well as the project proponents that have an idea, to be able to identify where should I go, why is this program different from this one, and where will I get the chances to receive funding and to pilot my idea. So it's a bit fragmented. sometimes it's a bit in siloed, and we hope that through, for example, the coordination mechanisms that has been created for this AFSIA program, we will ensure a better coordination, a better communication between the different implementing entities and different actors working on this program, so that we can really leverage and build on what your country is trying to achieve. Then we can see that one of the challenges is still the limited scaling pathway. Sometimes it's linked to finance, to this capacity of attracting private sector, of demonstrating that this small scale project technical assistance is bankable and can be of interest of the private sector. Sometimes this is one of the barriers, but sometimes it's also linked to how do we connect the project, the technology, the pilot to the government and the national system of innovation policies, budget, in order to reduce sustainability. And the third lessons learned that we have is some difficulties on post-implementation monitoring. We understand, and I'm sure you do as well, how important monitoring is in order to demonstrate that your project has been impactful. And this data, this reporting, this monitoring will support the effort of leveraging additional funding. The problem is that adaptation takes time. And sometimes when we end a project after 15, 18 months of implementation, we don't know yet whether it has managed to generate impact. And once we close, it's difficult to continue monitoring the project because the team move ahead to another project, and it's difficult to ensure that the reporting and monitoring is continuously achieved. So how do we manage this situation? And another challenge that we face is the lack or the low data availability and quality, which of course limits the capacity to measure the baseline and to demonstrate progress. So some of the recommendations that we would like to share is that from our experience in the project that we have seen have been extremely successful, and Alisa mentioned Burundi and the Slam Dam project as an example in her presentation, is when the country was able to create a very strong ownership. And this happened by connecting different institutions, different entities on the ground. So it starts, of course, with you, with the Adaptation Fund focal point, and maybe all the other actors working on climate change in the country. So it can be, of course, the focal point of the CTCN, which usually sits in the Ministry of Environment. You have also climate change negotiators at COP, and there is also climate change experts working on the NDC, working on TNAs, working on the NAPs, and all of them have a different vision and different information and different aspects that could be related and could be connected to your project. And our experience is that the more you talk to these people, the more you engage with the national actors, and the higher is the chance for your project to have a strong ownership and to be scaled up. And this not only involve the national expert on climate change, but it's also involve the financial institutions. So if we start talking with the EU delegation on the ground, or with GIZ, or with AFD, or with other actors, even national banking institutions that have a window focused on sustainability, and we sit and we try to think about how should this project be designed? Does it make sense? What would be your interest in participating on this project, and what would you need as a result, as a deliverables, in order to take it forward? So when we have the sense to sit and to brainstorm from the very beginning, from the design stage, and of course this process takes some time, stakeholder consultation takes some time, but then it is when a project is very anchored into the national system of innovation, and when it can really easily move ahead and manage to get additional funding. So this has been a very strong learning from Adaptation 1. When it comes to sustainability, sometimes maybe it's better to start from the bottom and try to understand what makes sense to all these actors, and then define the project accordingly to all these needs, instead of creating a project and then start looking for funding, because sometimes this perspective doesn't work so well. And then in terms of monitoring, we are very happy that during last COP, some global goals for adaptation were created, and these 56 indicators can be very easily used, are publicly available, and have been approved by many relevant actors and countries. So this is for us, we consider that as a very strong game changer to have these 56 indicators, and the adaptation fund is also working on a revised research framework, which is also very useful, and this can help probably to improve the quality of the monitoring. And last but not least, but I think I already mentioned a little bit this, is the need to talk more with the private sector in order to understand what are their risks, what are they afraid of, how can we transform a small-scale technical assistance into a bankable project? What do they need to feel comfortable that this makes sense and this is going to lead somewhere? So this would be the main recommendation. I think I have 1 minute left, so I will be very fast in presenting Adaptation Fund 2. Adaptation Fund 2 has been launched. It's a 10 million program through which we expect to implement 60 projects, 40 as technical assistance pilot, and then 10 as scale up, and 10 as enabling environment, national system of innovation. This program is targeting developing countries, and more specifically, least developed countries. It's open. We are sourcing projects. We are looking for strong projects with adaptation rationale, innovation rationale, and sustainability perspective. And the selection is made on a rolling basis. So please, if you have any ideas that you believe fits the AFSIA program, the AFSIA window of a CTCN, feel free to reach out to us. For the moment, we have selected 18 initiatives, 80% in ADC, 65% in Africa, 20 in Asia, and 15 in LAC. And finally, last word, and already mentioned by Alisa, adaptation, the AFSIA program is implemented by different entities. At the moment, we are 5, CTCN, it's me, and then you will have a presentation today by UNDP and WFP, but please also note that SPC, which is based in the Pacific, also has an AFSIA program, and UNIDO as well. And all this big family is coordinated, or start to be coordinated through different tools and hopefully some kindness that will help us better align the objective and the communication around the big AFSIA program. So I'm done. Thank you very much, and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Nadesh, for the presentation. Are there any questions, comments on what the CTCN approach, the lessons they have experienced?
Farai, we have one hand by Pedro Silva from Brazil.
I see it. Pedro, please go ahead. You can unmute yourself. Please, you can take the floor. Pedro, I think you are still muted from our end. Please go ahead and unmute yourself and take the floor. Pedro, we still see you as muted. Maybe I also see another hand from Paraskevi. Maybe Paraskevi, if you can go ahead and unmute yourself and take the floor, and we'll circle back to you, Pedro. Yeah, we'll circle back to you. I see your message about the muting. In the meantime, Paraskevi, please go ahead.
Thank you very much, and many thanks, Nadesh, for sharing your experience in the design of the UNEP project through AFSIA. I just had a quick question regarding the 56 indicators that you mentioned, because I didn't catch what indicators are these? Thank you.
Yes, these are called global goal for adaptation. These were indicators that were designed during last COP, and you have a list of 56 indicators that cover all the main important adaptation criteria, like starting from including water management, early warning system, and else. And this is publicly available. I think you will find it in the UNFCCC webpage. If you put in Google UNFCCC global goal for adaptation, I'm sure you will have access to the Excel.
Great, many thanks.
Thank you. Any other question, comment?
Am I audible now?
Yes, we hear you. Go ahead, please.
Okay. Thank you very much, and thank you, Nadej, for the presentation. I'm Pedro from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Brazil, and also a member of the Technology Executive Committee of the UNFCCC. I would like to, I hear, listening attentively to your presentation, and scalability is definitely a major issue, a major challenge. In Belém, we had, with the approval of the Belém Technology Implementation Program, really a call for an active engagement of the technology mechanism, including the tech and the CTCN, with wider and diverse set of financing institutions in order to really look for scalability options. So my question here is, given this kind of dimension of the challenge, but from these diversity of actors that exist out there, not only the private sector, but I think about multilateral development banks, regional development banks. So which would you see that would be more prone to be really approached in order to perhaps and show interest in a second step of an initial step of getting a scalability starting from a pilot project. So because this is perhaps will be the key challenge we will have throughout this year in order to conceive the implementation of the TIP, the BITIP, and would be really nice to have your insights on how to engage with this big diversity of financing institution. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Pedro. It's a very difficult question. For the moment, as per her experience, it has been more on a case-by-case basis. So talking with all these actors that I have mentioned, not only the climate change negotiators, the climate change actors in the country, but also the financial landscape, it's for the moment for us it's opportunistic. So sometimes we see direct links, or we see the EU delegation having a project and a formulation where they expect to pilot something, and then we can easily connect our project and create leakages between this proposal and the formulation and our project, and try to see how this can be scaled up. Sometimes it's discussion with the Bank of Ghana, for example, expressing interest into insurances and how project being directly linked to climate change agriculture insurances, and then the connection can be made. But it's more opportunistic and based on these connections that we manage to create through different conferences, etc., than a methodology that has been defined that could be duplicated to other projects. So we are at that early stage, let's say, of the process. I hope we will by the month be able to have more strategic way of managing this, but for the moment it's more based on the opportunities that we see. But we do believe that starting this discussion at design stage increases the chance of scaling up, because the project can then provide whatever is needed by this financial institution. And this financial institution can be directly part of the steering committee of the project. They can follow the evolution of the project. They can go on the ground missions with the team, and then it's it's much easier to scale up, right, than just ending the project and trying to ask around, okay, who is interesting to take the next step. So, but for the moment, we are still baby steps, I'm afraid, not methodological.
Yeah, if I may quickly react, thank you so much, Nadej. That's what I actually was expecting as an answer, because that's my feeling. I think that's in a case by case. And maybe one of the things we may want to take further is to establish like a structured process or strategic, as you say, in order to make these kind of move from pilot to scale a bit more probable, right? And I think there may be some examples out there. I think about the IRENA. They have an interesting process in which they have set previously a pool of potential financial actors, in which they already established some relationship in terms of defining the process of assessing these potential projects, and maybe this will lead to a more probable scalable projects in the future. So we may also want to look for existing structured processes that can be a good reference in the way forward. But thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm very happy to be involved to learn the step that you will be taking on how side we are starting to think about a community of practice that will not only connect AFSIA grantees, but also the investing and potential financial institution that could be interested in that. So, I mean, we are brainstorming, but very happy to learn from your pathways. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Nadej, and thanks for the questions from the participants.
Sorry, Farai, if
very
quickly,
go ahead,
before we move on, sorry to jump in. I was having trouble raising my hand, but I also wanted to mention that under the phase 2 of the AFSIA partnership, some of the development banks have been invited, the MDBs, so the World Bank, EBRD, and as well as CAF have been invited to submit proposals. We are yet to see these proposals, but then to Pedro's question, there could also be opportunities working with these MDBs that will also issue calls in the region, and specifically the World Bank expression of interest was focusing on LAC region, and then you also have the CAF EOI again focusing on the LAC region. So this is something to watch out for, and once these projects come into implementation, they will also be part of this coordination mechanism that takes place among the AFSIA partners. Over.
Thanks, Elisa, for that additional bit. And of course, maybe right now, just being cognizant of time, I'd like to call upon Monica Borrero. She's the Global Program Manager from UNDP, and she'll share the experience of UNDP on the same matter. And she might actually also touch on the issue of scalability also that Pedro maybe you are alluding to. But Monica, perhaps over to you, and you have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Farai. I'm going to share my slides right now. Please confirm if you can see them. Can you see my screen and hear me?
Yes, we see it and we hear you clearly. Please go ahead.
Okay, perfect. Perfect. So let me just okay, so thank you so much for the invitation to share with all of you some of the lessons learned and insights for the potential design of other small or large innovation projects. I'm going to go through very, very quickly through the main results and what was the UNDP AFSIA program about. So it was mainly a $16 million program, partly funded by the Adaptation Fund and partly funded by the European Union. With this funding, we supported 44 initiatives in 33 countries. As you can see, it was a global program. From the 16 million, we channeled approximately 8.3 million in small grants that range between 60K to 250K per grantee. And the majority of these grants were channeled to African grantees, Asia and the Pacific, Latin America, and to a lesser extent, Europe and Arab states. So this is a snapshot of the UNDP AFSIA impact data. This program managed to benefit 2.6 direct and indirect beneficiaries and generate a series of environmental, socioeconomic impacts, and also innovation and scalability results. As you can see here, and I would like to emphasize in the, I want to emphasize in the last part, collectively, the 44 initiatives reported to have unlocked approximately 4.1 additional funding as a follow-up action or result of the AFSIA program. The focus of the AFSIA program in UNDP was to provide small grants to NGOs, CSOs, organizations that were led by the communities, indigenous peoples, women, youth, etc., but with a very strong focus in tracking and promoting models that shifted from grant dependence to income generating initiatives to ensure this long-term viability and sustainability. So here we can see how at the beginning of the APSIA program, only 20% of the grantees reported to generate some sort of revenue, 20%, and after their participation in APSIA with the packages of technical assistance, knowledge brokering, investment brokering, etc., 59% reported to be generating between $10,000 to $100,000 per year. Actually, out of those 59, 32 were generating annually $100,000 per year, which ensured the sustainability or was an important step towards sustainability. 14% were market creators, so they generated a product or service in a market where it didn't exist before, and approximately 9% were proof of concepts or tested absolutely like new ideas. So now I'm going to dive into the lessons and recommendations from the design perspective and what we learned and what we captured to actually improve and refine the UNDP APSIA program for the second phase. So as I already explained in APSIA 1, we were very broad in scope. Basically, we allowed non-accredited entities, NGOs, CSOs, business associations, so non-for-profit organizations who were duly registered in the Global South, like in the countries, countries from the Global South, and that met the criteria for the Adaptation Fund, who met certain criteria in terms of adaptation, innovation, scalability. So we received like approximately 1,000 applications. We were very broad and quite flexible in the type of applications that we received. And we ended up with a great and vast variety of different ideas, different solutions, but with one grantee per country, which in this case, that was the first phase, was great because we had a lot, like a good base to learn and to improve and test new solutions. But it proved to be a bit more difficult to support that specific grantee in the local or national ecosystem. And those lessons learned have been captured for the improvement of APSIA 2. So in APSIA 2, we are planning to do 2 global calls for proposals, one specific for non-for-profit organizations and one for MSMEs, and do obviously a targeted outreach through our 5 regional bureaus with support from our country offices, good dissemination with AF Secretariat, NIEs, RIEs. In the selection process of the proposals, we are planning to do to put a very good weight, of course, in the quality and readiness of these proposals and categorize them into market readiness innovation, scale-ready innovations, and public good anchored innovations. I'm going to explain a little bit more in the next slide. We are also going to focus in 3 thematic areas, more specifically resilience food systems, nature-based solutions, and disaster risk reduction and recovery. If possible, we are going to try to focus or aggregate 2 to 3 grantees per country. And we believe that this clustering approach will help us leverage more the existing local networks, build the ecosystems and the opportunities at the local level, create more peer-to-peer learning opportunities and collaboration at the local level, and is a most cost-effective delivery and tailored way to create these scaling pathways. Why are we proposing to select these 3 topics? Is because, as you can see, from all the grants that we delivered in APSIA 1, the vast majority came to tackle problems that were related to food security, nature-based solutions. I mean, we're proposing solutions with nature-based solutions and disaster risk reduction. So we believe that these are topics that are very much needed at the local level. But on the other hand, with all the investment brokering, knowledge brokering that we did, we also know that there are many investors that are focusing in these topics. So we believe that if in AFCIA 2 we focus a bit more, narrow down a bit more the thematic areas, we can provide a more tailored technical assistance, knowledge brokering, and also investment brokering to our grantees. I'm going to go back to this slide. The market-ready innovations, scale-ready innovations, and public good anchored innovations is basically the degree of readiness of the grantees. So our selection process is going to be very emphatic in requesting certain type of information, which will allow us to have these three types of grantees: those that are more ready to perhaps access a commercial loan or non-interest loan, those that with a little bit more of funding can reach the next step in scaling, and those that perhaps don't have a for-profit business model but are very good at creating impact and are public good anchored innovations, still have the possibility to work with us because their socioeconomic impact or innovation angle is very strong. This is the preliminary selection criteria that we are planning to use in AFCIA phase 2, but it's very similar to what we used in the first phase. This is just to depict basically what were the main things that we were looking at in the proposals. Obviously, the solution needed to address a specific climate risk, needed to co-design or benefit directly vulnerable communities, so youth, women, indigenous peoples. That's why we collaborated and channel funded to, in many cases, like youth-led organizations, indigenous people organizations. They were the ones that proposed their solution and submitted the proposal, following and addressing the specific needs that they had. Their solution had to be innovative. We are using the definition of the adaptation fund. So it's like in the broader perspective, it could be tools, technologies, business models, ways of working with different stakeholders that are unusual. And since our focus has always been in the scalability and in at least trying to, depend less on the grants, we would like to see in AFCIA 2 a bit more track record on income generation or revenue generation potential, a pathway to sustainability and scaling, and of course, a theory of change around environmental and socioeconomic impact. So, as one of the lessons learned in AFCIA 2, we would also like to be more emphatic in taking each of our grantees and doing a thorough mapping for this grantee in their respective investors' ecosystems, climate change ecosystems, for example, for connections with government or policy programs, innovation and entrepreneurial ecosystems to try to unlock additional finance or participate in communities of practice or something that is already existing at the local level in terms of entrepreneurship, scaling, iteration of ideas, testing. I put here the last two and would like to emphasize it more. The AFCIA partnership and the connection with national implementing entities and regional implementing entities is also part of what our mapping is going to be, because as Nadesh already explained, and also Alisa, we want to not reinvent the wheel. Like if, for example, WFP or UNEP already has a very strong entrepreneurial ecosystem or innovation ecosystem in Tanzania, and we end up with 2 or 3 grantees in Tanzania, we would like to plug them in to whatever is happening there. Or in some of these cases where there's strong potential, we can even think about or aggregate a few grantees with similar topics to create or develop together a large innovation proposal, just to mention one example. So to finish, I'm just going to go through 3 to 4 more like broader lessons learned from AFCIA 1. So one of the most important things that we received as a good thing in terms of feedback from our grantees is that prioritizing inclusive design and tailored flexible funding modalities were very good for these implementers to respond to the local needs rather than, you know, coming with rigid prescribed activities. So again, we were very flexible with the type of solutions that we were gonna fund. They just needed to broadly respond to these 5 criteria that I showed, but they really, really targeted and responded to the local needs of the grantees. And whenever it was needed, the grant was quite flexible in terms of adapting budget, adjusting the activities, etc. It's one of the most flexible instruments, legal instruments that we have in UNDP, precisely to try to test these ideas. The other one is very important, actively engage national stakeholders like government, private sector, financial institutions to try to embed innovations into policy frameworks and national climate strategies. One good example, I see I still have time, testing my time. One example in West Africa, we were supporting an organization that was reutilizing a very ancient construction technique that is called Nubian vaults. And as part of this support with AFSIA, they expanded their operations in Cote d'Ivoire with the support of the UNDP country office there and with the support of the Ministry of Construction, Ministry of Environment. They saw a huge opportunity of replicating this eco-construction technique, and there's a huge potential of follow-up funding. So what we did was promote that we could do like a demonstration house, or more like a school or museum, do all the necessary tests that, you know, ensure that it was structurally stable and with all the necessary safeguard measures. And now they are at the stage in which they want to take the next step towards scalability. Pairing flexible grants with technical assistance, business coaching, knowledge, and investment brokering proved to be very beneficial for our grantees. As I showed at the beginning, many of them started generating revenue and becoming more sustainable or less dependent on grants, or at least diversifying their revenue avenues, their revenue streams, to continue implementing these solutions or scaling or replicating if that's the case. So we partner with different networks of investors, philanthropy networks, MBA schools, a wide range of stakeholders to offer these packages of technical assistance and networking. Collaborations with universities, as I mentioned, in our case, we collaborated with many business schools like Oxford, Yale, Instituto de España, in Mexico, EGADE business schools, to pair our grantees with EMBA students or MBA students that help them refine business models, follow on funding roadmaps, or develop market analysis develop market analysis. So it was a win-win situation, both for the students to have, you know, hands-on experience on real development like challenges, and the grantees received a very good product for their scalability efforts. And last but not least, incorporate continuous learning loops and feedback mechanisms, which means basically don't be afraid to fail when you are testing these solutions, as Alisa already mentioned. For us, this was, of course, at the core of the program. Luckily, most of the solutions managed to go to the next step and implement, but we had a couple where the outcomes were not what they were expecting, and we managed to, you know, learn from it, capture the lessons learned, and with the ones that managed to as well finish, it was a complete iterative process where they did a lot of learning and adaptive management. I wanted to invite you lastly to visit our website, where you can see the UNDP AFSIA report. You can download it here. There you can see a lot of our lessons learned captured in terms of resilience, innovation, local adaptation, scalability, gender. And in our website, you can also see fact sheets for each of our grantees, videos, and a lot of communications and knowledge product that can probably inspire you as well, or you can find some specific examples from your countries. Thank you so much. Over to you, Farai.
Thank you, Monica. Just looking at the time, maybe we'll take just one question. I know there's a question in the chat from Eniola, but is there anybody who wishes to take the floor while we respond to that in the chat? Just one question before we move on to the next presentation. Anybody who wishes to take the floor? I'm not seeing any hand raised from my end. With that, maybe let's move to the next presentation. We'll respond to Eniola in the chat. So now I'd like to invite Regina Schmidt. She's the head of Sustainable Development Goal 2 Acceleration at WFP, and she'll be sharing experiences from WFP. So Regina, the floor is yours. Please go ahead.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks so much. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Can you just confirm that you hear me well and you see my screen?
Yes, we do.
Perfect. So I'm part of the Innovation Accelerator of the World Food Programme, and our mandate is to source, support, and scale high-impact innovation. And we are the one who are running this Adaptation Fund Climate Innovation Accelerator, and we had been founded 10 years ago. And the way that we are running this program is slightly different than the two very insightful presentations that you have just seen before. So our goal is really, on the one hand, the objectives to identify, support, and scale high potential climate innovations, but really in order to address food system challenges along the value chain. What we want to do is we want to strengthen local communities, so really to promote local and global regional collaboration. And we need to do that by increasing knowledge and the evidence base. We are doing it slightly different. This is a 5-year program, but we have decided to run regional cohorts. So the first cohort started in the MENA region, Middle East and North Africa in 2024. The second one last year in Asia Pacific. The third one we're kicking off this year in Latin America and the Caribbean region. And the last one will be next year. And for each of the region, we were selecting 3 different countries. So the first year we started with Egypt, Jordan, and Lebanon. Now we're collaborating with Nepal, the Philippines, and Pakistan. And from this year on, the Dominican Republic, El Salvador, and Peru. What I wanted to show you is the approach on how we're doing it. And the starting point for us is really this design phase. We try to frame the climate innovation problem statements in co-creation with the local governments, with the WFP country offices in the field and external stakeholders. And just to make it very, very specific, in a country like Lebanon, so together with the ministry there and local stakeholders, we sit together to identify what are the problems that they have in the area of climate adaptation. From there, we launch a call for application. We select 10 to 12 climate innovations per cohort. Those are invited to a 1-week innovation bootcamp where we bring different stakeholders together. So we have the startups, so innovative organizations. This can be ventures, this can be NGOs, this can be spin-off of academia. So we have these innovative organizations. We bring governments, we bring other stakeholders. We have people from WFP country offices, from the regional bureau, but also technical experts on climate adaptation. We bring them together for 1 week to work on those solutions. And after that week, we have a very good understanding, okay, are they a good fit to the problem that we want to solve? And can we go ahead? If there's a green light, we move to the contractual part, but then the phase 5 is the most important one. This is where the sprint program starts. The sprint program, we normally do a shorter sprint to validate those solutions in the field. Are they really delivering? We're very strict in terms of impact metrics. We have project trackers to identify on what they achieve in a certain moment in the field. And if the results are promising, then we move to the next one, which is then a kind of a growth sprint, and we continue to work for them in their way to scale. Let me give a couple of pictures and examples just that you see on how we do it. So the first one, as I was mentioning, very important, the Inception workshop. On the left-hand side, you see a picture, an example, how we did it in Cairo, in Egypt, together with the Ministry of International Cooperation. We even had the minister there and other representatives, and we put everyone together in a room, and we were discussing for 2 days, okay, now which problems do we want to tackle? The same happened on the middle one. This is, let's say, the Inception workshop in Lebanon, and the other one very active in Jordan. With this collaboration, we came up to a list of challenges and problem areas that we want to tackle. And that's very different depending on the country. So one example here you can see from Lebanon. So we wanted to have the solutions areas around precision agriculture solution to monitor soil moisture, temperature, crop health, soil conditions. Or it can be affordable off-grid irrigation technologies, solutions for pastoralists, innovative financing solutions, eco-friendly solutions to eliminate pests, affordable off-grid cold mobile storage solutions, and solutions that convert agricultural waste. These solutions were the basis for the call for application that we will launch through social media. And we have received more than 300 applications in the region. And for us was one of the prerequisites, because we very much came from the local needs. We need to find solutions which are either headquartered in the country or have already a subsidiary. So based on the problem statement, we selected 10 to 12 innovations. We invited them to a 1-week innovation boot camp. And you see here different moments where we interacted them. So there were plenary sessions with topics like climate adaptation, but also human-centered design, so innovation methodologies, innovative financing, finance sustainability. So it was really a moment to build capacity with the ventures. But there were also a lot of working sessions, interactive, where we brought together startups, World Food Programme, governments. And we had a lot of discussion, could that solution really be the right one in order to tackle the problem? Because we're starting from certain areas, certain challenges. We want to find solutions for that. The selected ventures were very diverse. And just was picking 3 ventures from the 3 countries. So in Jordan, the topic on soil health was a very big topic. So this is, for instance, one solution which distribute microbes that transform crops to be more climate resilient. In Egypt, the topic was much more on irrigation. So how can we transform the flood irrigation into smart solar-powered systems? And the third one in Lebanon, this is a solar-powered industrial bakery. So how can you find a way, a clean energy solution that uses solar-powered convection oven with integrated hydrogen backup? So you can see the portfolio is very diverse because the needs are diverse. We see some regional pattern, and it's quite interesting. So these are now examples from the cohort in MENA. We have already selected the second cohort in the Asia region, and the Asian region is very, very different. We have a couple of parametric insurance solutions. We have more weather forecasting, early warning. So really starting from the different needs. Now, the longest process is the acceleration phase. This is where we really work with them in the field. We are leveraging the 120 countries and territories where WFP is in with people on the ground. And so there are community workshops with farmers where we introduce this kind of solution. There are consultation sessions with farmers. The second example around Egypt. Or let's say really the colleagues on the ground are testing a water tank in Jordan. This is really the first phase where we are validating the solution. Do they really deliver what we want to achieve? And this is the process. Once we have the first sprint 6 to 9 months closed and we have the first results, we then move on. Can we do a second sprint now really on the growth? It's validated perhaps with 50, 500 farmers, but we want to reach more. We want to reach like 100,000. And this is where we are continuing piloting and working with them in the field. A couple of recommendations from my side. So our starting point was always like a demand-driven approach. We start with the local needs. We bring key stakeholders together by engaging with the governments, different regional, local players, rather than applying broad global priorities. The Inception workshop was a very strong moment to bring these people together, to align. There are many priorities in a country, but to align on the ones where we really want to close the gap. And then you match the solutions with real context-specific problems. The second was you have a clear understanding of the problems, but you also need to be quite concise and consistent to find the right solution. So define transparent eligibility criteria, a simple application process, and then a very consistent and fair application that you really find solutions to the problem. The third one, and we've heard that before, what is very important in this whole process is the financial sustainability of these kind of innovative solutions. And this starts from the very beginning. So what we try to do is really to educate this organization in order to be financially sustainable. They need to move beyond the grants. They need to have solid revenue streams. So they need to survive after that WFP is supporting them. But that's something where you need to build from the very beginning. What is their value proposition? Who is going to pay for that on the medium term? And this is something we have different types of trainings and events where not only we educate them, so we build capabilities, but also we match them. This is a round table that we did with very different investors, just to match them and find someone who takes them up after we go out. So it's very important to bring these kind of players in from the very beginning. When we had the first cohort, development agencies like Islamic Development Bank, our pass. For the second, it's more the Asian Development Bank. Now in Latin America, other players. So very important that you look about what are the right players in your region. Last but not least, capacity building. What we've learned with these kind of organizations, we need to educate them on different levels. So really entrepreneurship. Many innovations have great ideas, have strong products, but you also need to be a businessman in order to be sustainable. They need to learn about innovation, but also about climate adaptation. We create many cross-country learning experiences, but also across the cohorts. And this was the process we have taken, and so far we're very satisfied. We're still evolving it every time. But this demand-driven approach, bringing the right stakeholders and shareholders from the very beginning, seems to be one of the ingredients of success. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Regina. And so before I ask a question, I'm just wondering if there is any question from the floor to you. Anybody who wants to ask a question or comment? As we wait, perhaps maybe a question to you, Regina, is, why the regional cohort approach as opposed to going with a more global approach and doing a global course? Perhaps if you can maybe start with that.
Yeah, this is a very good question. I think I was mentioning at the very beginning, we had one of the first accelerators within the UN, which had been founded with 10 years of experience. What we believe right now is that we need to do a system change approach, and it only works if you have different puzzles which fit together. So what we always try to do with this local approach, or sometimes also from a regional pattern, is about what are portfolios that complement each other. And we see like this 1 + 1 is more than 2 because we have complementary solutions. And it's not only from a product perspective, but it's also, if we have the critical size, we can bring more partners in. But from the very beginning, if you work in, let's say, now we have something like 20 ventures, you work in 20 countries, it's very difficult to have this comprehensive multi-stakeholder approach. For us, it's a little bit easier because we have less countries, but where we go in, we go deep.
Yeah, thanks for that. Thanks for that, Regina. And you know, I don't see any. Are there any other questions from the floor? Anybody wants to take the floor? I'm not seeing any new question in the chat. We've responded to a couple of comments in there.
Farai, there is a
We do have
question
one
from
actually in the
Ilke.
chat.
There is a question from Ilke. I wonder if Ilke, you'd like to
Yeah.
unmute yourself and ask your question.
Yes, happy to. Thank you very much for all the presentations. Can you hear me well? Perfect. I really liked all the outcomes, and it's very inspiring how these different AFCIA programs work, and a lot to learn, a lot of successes, and thank you also for sharing the challenges. It's good to build up on each other. I was just wondering, a lot of you used the word success, and I was wondering how you measure this. Of course, this is a general question, and it's on all our minds. Definitely in an adaptation focus, it's sometimes difficult to really have clear stats or clear outcomes in these kind of projects. So I was wondering if there's like a general way how you, across all these AFCIA programs, measure success, if you have any best practices there to share. Thank you.
Perhaps I can start, and I see Monica is also there now. I think there are some core indicators from the Adaptation Fund, and we just met recently with all the different implementing partners on how can we synchronize that. There are different core indicators, something like income increased for smallholder farmers, or like yield increased. And in all of us, we have a little bit of different focus, but let's say from a WFP perspective, where we're very much focused on SDG 2, zero hunger. For us, if we are able to increase the income or the yield of the smallholder farmers, the most vulnerable ones, this is a major achievement. Or if we can set up early warning systems to inform smallholder farmers earlier and pre-position finance, and we can measure that, you know, how many people did we reach, how many people could we support with that. These are like the indicators that we are measuring, which are a kind of a success for us. I think this is on the solutions itself. I mean, there are other indicators much more on the levels of the organizations, because we speak with startups. So for us, another indicator is also on how much did we accelerate them. Sometimes these are early stage solutions. They come with an amazing idea. Are we able to help them at a certain moment to build up solid revenue stream that they be, let's say, financially sustainable? So that's more an indicator on the acceleration side. But that's a little bit on how we are looking at. I don't know, Monica, do you want to complement?
Thank you, Regina. No, I think you have covered many of the same indicators that we used as well. And I think as part of our discussions with the other AFCIA partners, we kind of agreed that there are certain core indicators that we can all collectively look at. But just to add on what Regina said, we also captured other types of indicators that reflected environmental impact. For example, hectares of land restored or protected, or more at the socioeconomic level, a household with improved livelihoods, or individuals with improved productivity or professional skills. So capturing the knowledge or the capacity enhanced at the beneficiary level. And at the organizational level, similar to what Regina said, try to capture whether there is a different revenue streams, revenue generation, unlocked additional finance from different actors, could be public, private. So these type of indicators were the ones that we looked at. Of course, it was not standardized at the beginning. Like, we didn't say, okay, if you have restored X amount of hectares, then you're successful, because we had so many different solutions and they were all working in different solutions and thematic areas that was not possible. But I think there's some sort of like criteria that makes you decide or conclude that you are generating concrete impact, is measured, and you are in the pathway of financial sustainability or operational sustainability.
Thank you, Monica, for that. We have 3 minutes left. Is there anybody with a question, comment from the participants that you want to pose to any of the presenters, any of the speakers? So there's a question in the chat, and it's a question to Regina. It's, how do you accelerate on the ground implementation? I don't know, it's from Alison. Alison, feel free to unmute yourself if you want to further expand on your question, but I'm reading it as you typed it. How do you accelerate on the ground implementation? And she says she assumes you're working with local partners to actually deliver the programming, run the boot camps, and bring solutions to potential customers and so on.
So what we are doing is we are leveraging the network of WFP. WFP has offices in 120 countries and territories, which means we have people on the ground, and we partner very closely with those people. So the starting point, as I was mentioning, is a country strategic plan. For each of the countries where we are in, we have a plan with the government, and that's pretty much the basis. And we have the people who, let's say, want to deliver those plans. So the Adaptation Fund program feeds into the implementation of these countries' strategic plans. But we have people on the ground. That's one of the big benefits. So we are kind of implementation entity on the ground.
Thank you, Regina. So we have 2 minutes, and just before I give the floor to Salia to give, closing remarks, just an important question to each of the speakers. So starting with Nadej, because just for the Adaptation Fund NIEs and RIEs, in 5 seconds, what would you advise as a low-hanging fruit that NIEs should consider when preparing to develop an innovation program? Just in 5 seconds, what's low-hanging fruit, each of you, starting with Nadej? What would you advise NIEs as a low-hanging fruit that they should consider when designing innovation projects and programs under the fund?
5 seconds, I will say ownership of your country, so collaborating with as many people that are working on climate change strategies in your country, that are involved in the definition of climate change strategies for your country, and try to sit down to stakeholder consultation. And as Regina said, make sure that we all agree that this is the priority at that moment that you want to follow. Thanks.
Thank you. Regina? 5 seconds.
Yeah, I would say start with the needs on the ground, with really, let's say, the people who are affected, and bring the right people in the room in order to get started.
Thank you. Monica, last word.
I would say that if you're going to be working with communities, NGOs, non-for-profits, try to start infusing the entrepreneurial thinking in these organizations, because that's the best way to ensure sustainability in the long run and depend less and less on the shrinking grants that are existing worldwide.
Thank you. Thank you very much to all 3 of you, and of course to Alisa also is the 4th presenter. But with that, we are precisely at time. So Salia, do you want to close us off? Yep.
Sure, thank you. We are at time, so all I want to say is thank you all for being here, and much thanks to our presenters for sharing such valuable insights. It has been a pleasure. Have a wonderful rest of the day wherever you are.
Thank you. And with that, the webinar is closed. And thank you very much. And this is not the end of the discussion. We'll continue interacting and exchanging. And please feel free to reach to the Adaptation Fund Secretariat and as well to all the presenters, continue the discussion and engagement. So thank you, everyone, and goodbye. Enjoy the rest of the day, evening, morning, wherever you are. Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.